Hi there, this is Dennis Velko with Out Bureau, and you're listening to Out Bureau Voices. We have another very interesting conversation today, and in all of our conversations, we speak with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders from around the world. Today, we have a very interesting show for you. We're going to be talking with Ella Slade. They are one of the lead LGBTQ inclusivity persons, directors, etc. We're going to let them talk all about the actual role because I probably just flubbed that up. But they are one of the big wigs at IBM, which IBM, as you have heard in several of our episodes, has always been a very forward-thinking leader in the full spectrum of diversity inclusion. So Ella, we're so pleased to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It's amazing to be here. I'm really, really excited for our conversation, for sure.
Well, since I probably did just get your title completely wrong, because I've not yet finished my first cup of coffee, so my brain's not completely firing here. So if you could just tell us just a brief, what your role is currently at IBM, just for clarity. And then let's kind of jump back and talk about your professional journey and maybe even some of your personal life journey on, kind of exploring and realizing, who you are. Okay?
Yeah. Definitely, that sounds fantastic. So I am IBM's global LGBT plus leader. So I work within the diversity inclusion organization within the HR sphere at IBM. I've done my role now for 2 years, just passed my kind of 2-year anniversary in the role in June. It's a fantastic role. I absolutely love it. I remember a few years ago, so just kind of going back on my career journey a bit. So I joined IBM as an intern back in 2014. And in the UK, you do like your internship as part of your degree. So you take like a year out to do a year's internship, go back to university for a year, and then hopefully find a graduate job. And I did a year-long internship at IBM in our recruitment marketing team. I absolutely fell in love. Like I fell in love with the world of work, for starters, with what I was doing. So I was really focused on a lot of kind of branding stuff, how we position IBM as an employer of choice through our social media, our branding, our imagery, our campaigns, all that kind of great stuff. And then also I fell in love with IBM. I was like, this is great. I'm really, really enjoying this. I really like this culture, how just together and supportive everyone is. And everyone's always, I found a lot of IBM as a yes people, they're like, yes, I'll be able to help you, or yes, I'll be able to find someone that can help you, even if I personally can't. So from there, I was able to come back as a graduate after finishing my degree, and came back into the global talent marketing team. So kind of similar area within recruitment still, but this time I was on the global team rather than the European team. And over the next few years, I really focused on a few different areas, from our IBM Careers blog, our IBM Careers social media accounts, looking at setting up a brand ambassador program, which was amazing. There's been lots and lots of things I've gotten involved in. It was a really kind of varied role and varied kind of time of my career. But throughout that whole time, I've always been really interested in diversity and inclusion, and specifically around LGBT plus inclusion. So I'm part of or I have always been part of our employee resource group, or our network group in the UK for the LGBT plus community. And over time, I got more and more involved in that, and ended up being on their steering committee. And then as part of my day job, obviously we're looking at attracting top talent to IBM. So as my day job, I started to get more and more interested in attracting top diverse talent and seeing what we can do to specifically target certain constituencies. So one of the things that I started to get really interested in was Pride Month, and can we do something in Pride Month from an IBM careers perspective to try and attract more LGBT plus talent. And that led me to a conversation with my now manager, but my manager Joy did my role before me. And when she was in my role, I had a conversation with her on the phone, and she told me a little bit about what she does and some of the projects she was working on. And I just remember getting off the call and turning to my friend and just being like, that is my dream job. I want to be IBM's global LGBT plus leader. Like, that's the absolute dream. However, I meant in like 10 years time. I did not think that, a couple of years down the road and this would be me. I really didn't think so at all. So I definitely thought that was kind of a more longer term dream, but you know what? It's been amazing. And I'm so glad that I've been able to, get to it much sooner, because it has been a fantastic journey. So in terms of where I'm at now, so as I mentioned, I've been in my role 2 years. My role is very varied. So I work, like I mentioned, at a global scale. So basically anything to do with LGBT plus inclusion around the world at IBM kind of falls on my plate. So I get involved in things such as overseeing and supporting all of our LGBT plus network groups around the world and helping them with whatever struggles they have, whatever challenges they have, advising them, supporting them, seeing what's happening and what issues are important to them locally around the world, and seeing how we can help as IBM as a global company. We also have an LGBT plus council. So the council basically meets on a quarterly basis to check the progress of our 4 strategic priorities. So once a year, we all come together as the entire LGBT plus community virtually to come up with what do we want to focus on for this next year. And it was this year was the first time we did it virtually, and we ran the kind of a week-long series of sessions back in January to really just look at what do we want to do? What's the feedback? What's the experience like for you all as LGBT plus people in the world of work at IBM, and what can we do to make that better? And that kind of led us to kind of 4 strategic areas that we work towards, we focus on, and we have kind of squads of IBM volunteers that work on those initiatives. And I essentially just kind of oversee all that. So whenever an IBM comes out as trans, I tend to get more hands-on involved in their transition cases and just supporting them through their transition. So we have a gender transition support framework at IBM that we've had since 2017. It's fantastic. It's basically an online kind of guide and kind of document that essentially acts as like a backdrop to support both the employee themselves, to support and educate the manager, and also to educate the team as well. And I take a very kind of hands-on role in terms of that support kind of function during an employee's transition. And then finally, there's lots more things, but I also often get invited to be part of or get involved in somehow kind of special projects and various different things that may crop up throughout the year, whether it's Pride Month celebrations, whether it's the LGBT plus report that we recently published, which was a fantastic piece of work. And I'll definitely talk about it in a bit more detail later on. But yeah, there's always something else. Even when I kind of lay out, this is everything in my job, something else will always come up. I think that's one of the things that keeps my role so fresh and exciting, is that it does change so often, and it really is, yeah, amazing. So that's a bit about my career.
Well, great. Yeah, I think we have a similar personality in that we like things to be constantly adaptable and different things every day. Like, I am a horrible employee. If I have to do the same thing over and over and over again, like in that kind of a job set, I'm horrible, because I get bored. I need a challenge. Personally, I need a challenge in something, not necessarily completely brand new every day, but to be able to switch between different things and learn something every day. That's one of my personal things, is whether I'm learning something about my technology or I'm learning something about whatever it is. I love to write about studies. And so learning in that and then regurgitating that in an article or a video for others to kind of, can listen to or quickly read without reading, like a 60-page study document, being able to read like a 1-pager and get the gist of it. And of course, link out to it. But yeah, sounds like you guys are doing some amazing things. And, ask and ye shall receive. So luckily, it didn't have to take 10 years to get there. And obviously, you were working within the organization, and that ability and interest was seen. So, and that your now boss got a promotion.
I know. Once she got promoted, I was like, oh, Joy's role has become available. And originally I think it was put up on the system as being for people in the US. And I messaged her and I was like, Joy, I see this says it's in the US. And Joy was like, I would encourage you to apply. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And yeah, thankfully I ended up getting the job. And yeah, it's just been a complete whirlwind. It really has. And you talk about learning. I've learned so much in my role, like so much. And I feel like already being a member of the community, being already quite engrossed in the community, obviously stand me in kind of good stead in terms of my kind of knowledge about the community. But I feel like it's really helped me to understand myself a lot more as well. And I know we can kind of touch on a bit more about kind of identity and stuff. But when I first joined the role, so I identify as non-binary and queer and trans. When I first joined the role, I identified as queer, but I identified as a woman, or I didn't really know, sort of thing. And actually being in my role and being able to connect with so many trans and non-binary people and gender fluid people and gender conforming people at IBM from around the world, and just meeting with them, having more conversations with them, just getting to know some of their different experiences. And obviously in my role, I support a lot of them when they come out as trans, and I run a lot of enablement and education sessions about the trans community. Actually being part of that and being more heavily kind of integrated into that space made me realize, you know what, this is my space. These are my people, and this is where I belong. And being in my role has, done wonders and helped me to understand a lot better about who I am as well. So it's definitely been a phenomenal role for me, both obviously professionally, but also personally as well. And that's been a really, just really special, I guess.
Yeah, and what a really neat role to have, because just because I'm a gay male doesn't mean that I know the experience of a Latino gay male from Brazil,
Yeah.
or Mexico, or someone with a gay male Mormon experience, right? I mean, we're such intersectionality. I mean, everyone is intersectional, everyone, but the gay community is just like 3 or 4 more layers, right? And being open to learn, uh, you know using, being conscious, using proper pronouns, asking, and seeking that out. It's like one of my good friends, since I was 18 years old, she's trans, but we met whenever I was serving in the US military in Germany. Well, then she was American father, German mother. She stayed in Germany and has a German husband and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we're on Facebook, but we don't get to have a lot of, one-on-one conversations. And so what's been wonderful for me too, and, and I've met people just, going out, etc. But one of the things that I love about doing these conversations that are out Bureau Voices is the ability to connect with another person and hear their story, share their story, and learn from it myself. So even, whatever little bit of things that you do, it's whatever you do to get involved in the community where it's going to be a broader community is an opportunity to learn. And that could be done locally. It could be done in your place of work. It could be done at your university. But I just find that has been very educational for me and the audience. And so I can completely see how that's been educational for you. And such an interesting, such an interesting gift as well, is that your job, your role at your employer also has helped you personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been, phenomenal, like absolutely phenomenal. And I think one of the things that I think has really helped me in my role, just in general, it's just listening, like just listening to the voices. And, you talk about intersectionality and stuff. And, when you put that at a global scale, it's just so huge. And I am fully aware I will never understand everyone else's experiences. And that's why I so rely on listening and listening to others. And I mentioned that we recently launched an LGBT plus report. As part of that report, there was a few things that kind of went into it. There was a big piece of research and a kind of survey that was done by the IBM IBV team, that's Institute for Business Value team. And they do lots of amazing snazzy research stuff. So they did this great survey. But then, as well as the survey, we also conducted a jam. So I'd never been in a jam before. I had no idea what it was. So I'll kind of explain it a little bit to make it a bit.
Well, my favorite jam is blackberry.
Literally, I was like, are you talking about raspberry, strawberry?
Yeah. So I'm sure you were about to explain it, but I just wanted to voice what probably others were thinking when you started to say that. So
Yeah.
what is a jam? Because I did see that in the report as I was scanning, and I saw jammers, and I was like, oh, we're going to have to talk about that. What is that?
Yeah. So a jam is basically, when you think about like musicians getting together and having kind of a jamming session and playing different instruments and ending up making some amazing, amazing music. It's basically taking that concept and putting it onto other ideas and
Oh,
other kind of areas. So it's for us, for the way that we did it for the LGBT plus community, we used this jamming platform. Can't remember what the platform's called, but an IBM kind of jamming platform. And as part of that, it's kind of a text-based platform. It's basically like kind of more of like an very advanced like forum, like Reddit or something like that, where basically you have we had 7 different topic areas for the global LGBT plus innovation jam, and those 7 different areas within those had loads of conversations happening. So one of the areas, for example, was trans and non-binary belonging. And within that, we would then have VIP guests who would come in and would kind of kick off a topic or throw out a thought or a question or an idea. And it would just spark this wonderful conversation. And then we had like another topic area, which was around, your own kind of personal career development and kind of being your own champion. And in there was again some amazing comments and some amazing discussions happening. So it was a 36-hour, maybe 34, I always get them confused, 34 or 36-hour long jamming session that happened all around the world. So it was completely virtual and kept going all the way around the clock. And what happened off the back of that was all that content was analysed and a lot of insights were pulled out of that, and that fed into the LGBT plus report along with the kind of previous survey. So I mean the jam itself was a phenomenal experience. I said, I've never been in one, and just being in there, and it was completely external, so there was loads and loads and loads of like non-IBMers in there, and it was just amazing to just meet so many different people and to just share different thoughts and ideas and experiences as well. Some of it was really personal stuff that was being shared, and some of it was much more kind of theoretical around ways of kind of driving change and inclusion. But that all kind of came together. Sorry, yeah.
Cool. Well, if I could jump in there, I really love that concept, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see, how they, took that data to, pull out and analyze. But a survey has to be very carefully constructed, because one word could totally that you might think is the right word could be totally understood differently by the readers. And so having a structured survey coupled with this non-structured, dialogue and chat and jam, bridging that data together, I bet that really gave lots of rich additional insights. So
exactly, it kind of brings it to life, because I think when you're just looking at the statistics, I don't know about you, but my brain goes a bit crazy when I see so many numbers. I'm like, you go a bit kind of number dead to it. They just all kind of merge into one. But when you're actually looking at also the quotes from jammers, and when you're looking at kind of further kind of context and background and just insights that have been kind of pulled out, and kind of when we're looking at kind of societal kind of impact and lots of kind of other factors that feed into, why the LGBT plus community are behaving or responding in this way, or saying these things about inclusion, it is really interesting. And some of the stuff, I think my kind of biggest finding overall from the report, the thing that really stuck out to me, which sounds quite simple, is the fact that LGBT people still face discrimination based on their sexual orientation.
oh, yeah.
That was huge. And not only do they face discrimination, it's like 45% of our lesbian, bi, and gay respondents to the survey said that people with the same sexual orientation as them, they believe they are discriminated against in their workforce. So, I mean, that was huge, because I think, we know that it's still an issue. We know it definitely is. But actually seeing those numbers, it's like, oh, okay, this is still a huge issue. And that was just focused on sexual orientation. But obviously then the insights from the jam had a lot more stuff around the kind of trans community. And we know just in general about the kind of climate for the trans community in the US and in other countries can be incredibly difficult. So we've been definitely working with our communities, listening to them, whether that's through the jam, through internally kind of only focused stuff, but really just listening to them and seeing, okay, how do we make change here and what do we want to focus on? So I think that whole idea of just listening just drives everything that I do in terms of making sure that I'm representing the community as best I can. And the only way that I can do that is by involving them in everything. So they probably get a bit annoyed at me because I message them all the time on Slack, asking their opinion on certain things, or what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this? I'm planning on doing this. But for me, it's so important that they not only have their say and their voice is heard and elevated, but also that they're invested as well, and they're not they do get involved, and we have some fantastic LGBT plus IBMers and volunteers and everything at IBM.
Well, I really like that you do that communication, because, after all, you're the LGBTQ leader, right?
Yeah.
And if they ever get irritated with you, just remind them of that, and that you're not the LGBTQ dictator. Right?
Exactly.
So, getting that input is awesome. And it's the right thing to do. You're doing that definitely right. And but obviously spearheading, right? Being that leader, spearheading with input. And that's what great leaders do. So wonderful. So share a little bit about the report that you've been talking about. What are maybe some of the really interesting, I know it's a decent sized report. We probably can't talk about every aspect of it today. And I will likely write at least one or two or however many articles to put my voice to summarize it, since that's, again, one of my favorite things is to write about studies. And so what are some of the key highlights that maybe surprised you, or, disheartened you, or, something?
Yeah, I think, the statistics that I mentioned already around the kind of 45% of LGBT people still feeling like, people of their sexual orientation are discriminated against in the workplace, that was pretty huge. And that was pretty significant, because I think we feel like we, meaning kind of society, I guess, kind of feels like we're making progress. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can be very hard to be reminded that we're not, or that we are making progress, but maybe not as quickly as we thought we were. And seeing the realities of the fact that discrimination still exists can be disheartening. But I think, we still have hope, and we still move forward, and we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have hope.
Right.
Some of the other things. Sorry. Yeah.
One of the other stats that still holds true, it's now for 2 to 3 years in a row, where HRC, Human Rights Campaign Fund, and somebody else partnered and did a study, and shows that at least here in the United States, only, I forget the number, if it's 46 or 48% of self-identified LGBTQ people are out at work. So then you couple that with the 45 or so percent of LGBT people who experience discrimination. Now, there's probably some overlap on that number, but if someone's not out at work and they're completely on the down low, no one knows, they're probably not getting discriminated against, right? It's probably most of those people who are out at work and or are maybe they haven't said it, but are assumed to be. Because that's one of the other studies that I've written about, is even in the hiring practice, if you are assumed to be LGBTQ, you have the likelihood, like I'm talking to the New York University on this topic to their students, is like, if there's anything on your resume that indicates LGBT, like even if you were the IT director at the New York Community Center for 5 years, the likelihood that's 50% that resume is going to get tossed. And then if you are hired for men, gay men experience the same kind of gender inequality in pay that women do, which of course is ludicrous and shouldn't happen. But those are other studies that come up. And so very interesting. So didn't mean to cut you off there, but just wanted to kind of clarify that 45% might may or may not be, or that's coupled with the 46 to 48% who aren't even out.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and we were very fortunate to work with Out and Equal on the report as well, and also Workplace Pride were heavily involved in the jam as well. So we had lots of partners as well, and it was fantastic to actually be able to work with all of them on actually crafting this report and pulling it all together. Some of the other stats that kind of leap out for me was around, or some of the kind of other areas. So the fact that 9% of our jam respondents, so people that took part in the jam, felt that they do not express their gender authentically at work. And I found that pretty staggering, because that's pretty much 1 in 10 people. It's a huge percentage of the population that are just not presenting their authentic gender and their authentic self at work. So that was something that I think really surprised me, that it was so high. I was expecting that to come up, and I was expecting that to be one of the findings, but not necessarily to that extent. So that was really interesting for me, for sure.
Now, just out of curiosity, was that 9% of all, spanning all LGBTQ, or was that 9% of those who self-identify as trans and non-binary?
So that was 9% of all JAM respondents. So JAM respondents were majority LGBTQ+, but some were allies to the community as well. But so that's 9% across everybody. So it's even more staggeringly high, I guess.
Yeah, clarifying that's definitely high. Very interesting. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I love how open and a leader IBM has always been. You guys might not have that experience, but I've chatted with some companies. It's like, do more than the legal bare minimum,
Yeah, exactly. No, totally. And I totally agree. And one of the, just kind of piggybacking off what you were saying there, one of the questions or things that kind of sometimes gets raised when I'm doing kind of some education around like the trans community, for example, is, or just in the media, I guess, is people saying, oh, well, non-binary is this new thing, and it's this new fad, and it's a trend. And they say similar things about the trans community and stuff as well. And it's not, identities outside of the binary distinction of male and female have existed since literally the beginning of time in many different cultures around the world. But I think what we have now is a much more robust language to be able to talk about how we identify and to talk about how we feel and where we see ourselves and how we interpret our own existence. And I think that's one of the significant changes, which is why probably we probably have more younger people coming out as many different kind of identities under the whole LGBTQ plus umbrella, because there is more language available to them now to be able to talk about it. We no longer just talk about being gay or gay pride or the gay community. It is the whole spectrum, and we are so conscious now as a society, more so to make sure that everybody is included. And I think because people have that language, they're more able to come out, because they have something to come out as, rather than to be in the closet but not even know that is a closet that they're in. It's definitely huge. So I think that's definitely one of the things that shaped the younger generation, for sure. From my perspective, there's no point in a study without action and without doing something off the back of it. Absolutely. And that's why we were really keen to make sure that our LG Plus report had clear actions and takeaways for large corporations and for things that they can do. And they were things like making sure that you're filling the pipeline with top LGBT plus talent, making sure that you have the right policies and practices in place, making sure you're setting expectations for employees everywhere in your organization. And the last one was around using your brand power for good and your brand eminence for good. And that's all around external advocacy. We've seen a record number of anti-LGBT plus and specifically anti-transgender bills being put forward and even passed in the US this year. It's been absolutely horrific. Large organizations have the power to have something in that space. Even if that change is small, there's definitely kind of space there. That's definitely one of our kind of key takeaways.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Is there anything that we maybe haven't covered?
I'd say for the report, I think there's a section at kind of the beginning that specifically talks about the transgender community. I feel like we've come a long way in terms of LGBT plus rights, and we have come a long way in terms of the trans community in some places. for the trans community, we still have such a long way to go. And I think people forget about that, and large organizations can forget about that as well. So I think it's really important for us to make sure that we are being extra mindful of making sure that we have things like all gender restrooms at all of our facilities, making sure that we have, trans inclusive benefits, making sure that we are using inclusive language, making sure that we're doing whatever we can to be promoting pronouns. And that's something that we've done a lot of at IBM. IBMers can now add their pronouns through our HR system and have that displayed in our employee directory. We just launched an internal video the other week with loads of our senior leaders, including our CEO, talking in the video around the importance of pronouns. So everything that we can do in the space to really make sure that trans and non-binary people are included, and sometimes that is bigger structural changes, is so important for us to do. So I think we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go when both we're looking kind of around the entire globe, but also when we're looking at around the entire LGBTQ plus spectrum as well. We operate in well over 100 countries around the world, and some of those are countries where it is illegal to be LGBT plus, and we obviously have to comply with local law in those countries. However, one really important thing to mention is that we have a global equal opportunity policy that includes sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, among many other things. That is a truly global policy. So we will always protect our IBMers from discrimination within the kind of confines of IBM. On top of that, there's lots of work that we can do in those spaces around inclusion in general. So that's where we kind of lean our messaging towards being inclusive of others and respecting everyone with different backgrounds and different, life experiences and all that kind of stuff. So there are ways for us to negotiate and navigate some of those issues. But yes, don't get me wrong, it is very difficult. And that's one of the things that makes my role so difficult, is because we're not all operating at an equal playing field at all. It's so varied around the world. So that definitely is a challenge that all global organizations face.
Well, Ella, it's been such an absolute delight to chat with you today.
It's been lots of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, absolutely. And you are at any time, you or anyone that you know at IBM that would like to be on the show to talk about different things, open invitation. Just let me know and we'll get it scheduled. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, for staying tuned to this episode. You have been listening to Ella Slade, the LGBTQ inclusion leader at IBM. So we appreciate you tuning in, and whatever application or website that you're listening or watching this to, be sure that you take just a few moments and hit that follow, subscribe, or so forth. If you're on YouTube, be sure to hit that notification bell. I'm Dennis Velko, and oh, by the way, be sure to check out outbureau.com. Complete at least 30% of your profile to unlock all the site features, including over 240 groups as of now, and it is in your language. So if you happen to be English and would like to learn Spanish or like to practice, guess what? You can switch the articles from English to Spanish or German, Italian, etc. Choose your language today. I appreciate you again for tuning in. Bye-bye.